Australia's sustainable approach to international education. The future of Australia's international education sector is about to get a shake-up, one that's designed to secure its place on the world stage, but not without sparking strong opinions across the board. The Albanese government has just set a new national planning level, pegging international student capacity at 295,000 for 2026. That's 25,000 more spots than the previous year, signaling targeted growth, but still sitting 8% below the highest number seen right after the pandemic. Is this cautious optimism or strategic restraint? That depends on your perspective. Here's where the debate truly heats up. While every recognized education provider will at least keep their current share of students in the coming year, further expansion is by no means a free-for-all. Public universities eager to boost enrollment must prove their value beyond simple numbers. Specifically, two criteria close to the government's heart must be met. A genuine push to strengthen ties with Southeast Asia, as outlined in Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040, and a demonstrated ability to house both homegrown and international students safely and securely. It's a move that targets both academic excellence and student well-being, key issues that critics say are often overlooked when chasing economic benefit. But here's what most people tend to miss. The system is becoming more nuanced. Prioritization doesn't end with universities. Certain groups, like students from the Pacific and Timor-Leste regions, plus Australian government scholarship recipients, will still jump to the front of the visa queue. In addition, students progressing from Australian secondary schools or moving up from pathways providers and TAFE institutes into public universities get a special exemption from the cap altogether. This could be seen as a savvy way to reward long-term engagement or as preferential treatment. How do you see it? Intrigue continues into 2027 and beyond. Pending new legislation, the Australian Tertiary Education Commission will be handed the reins for monitoring growth in higher education, signalling a shift toward more centralized oversight. In the VET, vocational education and training sector, expect ongoing tweaks to visa processing and integrity measures to keep the system robust and responsive to actual skill needs. Though some in the sector argue this could stifle flexibility or favor larger, established providers over smaller or emerging institutions. Why does this matter so much? Because international education is more than an economic powerhouse, worth over $50 billion and supporting 250,000 local jobs. It's also a relationship builder, connecting Australia with the world in ways that go far beyond the balance sheet. The Albanese government is making big promises. Certainty for providers, a stronger focus on genuine educational outcomes, and a commitment to new student accommodation. Notably, there's a big push to make Australia more attractive to Southeast Asian students, which could reshape the campus experience and broader cultural connections in unexpected ways. But here's the big, potentially divisive question. Will these reforms strike the right balance between sustainable growth, sector diversity, and opportunity? Or do they risk over-regulating an industry that thrives on flexibility and global competition? Let's open it up. Do you think these new settings will make Australia even more of a magnet for international talent, or could they create unforeseen obstacles? Does the focus on Southeast Asia, coupled with stricter housing requirements, disadvantage some international applicants more than others? Jump into the comments and let's hear your take. Australian government lifts cap on international students for 2026, opportunities for education. Big changes are on the horizon for international students hoping to study in Australia. The federal government has just announced that it will be removing the national enrolment cap for overseas students in 2026, raising the allowable number by a significant 9%. This policy shift is making headlines, and not just in education circles. But here's where things get interesting. Universities that invest in providing student accommodation will now get preferential treatment under the new guidelines. Universities like the Australian National University and the University of Canberra are already gearing up to bring in a greater number of international students next year, keen to take advantage of the expanded intake. By prioritizing institutions that offer dedicated housing for these students, the government aims to address ongoing concerns about rising rents and competition for housing, a hotly debated topic in many Australian cities. Many believe this move will strengthen Australia's global reputation as a top destination for higher education, potentially fueling even more cultural diversity on campuses. However, critics worry this could put further strain on the housing market, especially in urban areas already grappling with tight supply. Is the government solving one problem but risking another? And this is the part most people miss. Not every university will benefit equally. Smaller or regional institutions lacking accommodation facilities might be left behind, raising questions about fairness and equal opportunity across the sector. Now, what's your take? Do you think lifting the cap and rewarding student housing is the right way to boost Australia's education sector? Or does it create new challenges for locals and smaller providers? Share your thoughts. Do you agree or believe there's a better approach? Let's start a conversation in the comments. Australia's international education future. 10 key takeaways from the Pi Live Asia Pacific. Australia's international education sector is at a crossroads, balancing growth, stability, and the urgent need for reform. The recent policy update session at the PIE Live Asia Pacific Conference revealed a landscape where ambition meets reality, and where the stakes for students, institutions, and policymakers have never been higher. But here's where it gets controversial. How do you reconcile the need for sustainable growth with the pressure to address domestic challenges like housing shortages? Let's unpack the 10 key takeaways that are shaping the future of this vital industry. And this is the part most people miss. The debate isn't just about numbers. It's about values, priorities, and who gets to benefit from Australia's global education brand. 1. Stable leadership offers relief, but not a cure. Julian Hill's appointment as Assistant Minister for International Education has brought a breath of fresh air to the sector. With his hands-on industry experience, he's positioned as a rare advocate for education's unique role in Australia's economy. Yet, as Phil Honeywood of IEAA pointed out, this stability is a fragile truce. While continuity with Minister Jason Clare avoids the chaos of new leadership, the sector still faces a political environment where education must fight for its place against security-driven agendas. The question remains, can this least worst outcome truly deliver long-term solutions, or is it just a temporary reprieve? 2. Sustainable growth over unchecked expansion. Assistant Minister Hill's message is clear. The days of growth at all costs are over. The government now prioritizes a sensible approach to managing student numbers and quality. This means stricter scrutiny of institutions and a ruthless focus on eliminating bad actors. But how do you define sustainable? The challenge lies in balancing student demand with Australia's capacity to support them, both academically and socially. Will this shift truly improve the student experience, or simply slow down a system already under strain? 3. Diversification as a national strategy. Australia is no longer content to rely on major cities as its primary student hubs. The push to decentralize international education to regional areas is both strategic and symbolic. By incentivizing study in places like Queensland and New South Wales, the government aims to ease congestion in cities like Melbourne and Sydney while boosting local economies. But how will this play out in practice? Will students from Southeast Asia, key partners in Australia's geopolitical strategy, see this as an opportunity or a logistical nightmare? The answer could shape the next decade of policy. 4. Housing as the new education bottleneck. For the first time, a senior minister has linked international education growth directly to housing availability. This is a seismic shift. The sector's social license now hinges on its ability to avoid exacerbating housing shortages. Imagine a future where student visa approvals are tied to local housing projects. This is the direction we're heading. But is this fair? Should international students, who contribute billions to the economy, be held hostage by domestic housing crises? The debate is just beginning. 5. The fairness fight. Universities versus independent providers. Phil Honeywood's warning about protecting the English language sector and private institutions has sparked a heated industry debate. Universities, as the bedrock of the system, have long enjoyed disproportionate policy support, but smaller providers, already reeling from visa processing delays, are now fighting for their survival. Felix Peary of ITECA argues that these institutions are not adversaries, but partners. Yet the question lingers. Can policy truly balance the needs of all stakeholders, or will the focus on integrity inadvertently crush smaller players? 6. Integrity over chaos, a necessary evil. Independent providers, despite their struggles, acknowledge that the integrity crackdown is a necessary step. Felix Peary's comments highlight a critical truth. A system that weeds out fraud ultimately protects everyone. But at what cost? Processing delays and regulatory hurdles are real pain points. The challenge is to enforce integrity without stifling innovation. Can the government walk this tightrope, or will its zeal for purity backfire on the very institutions it aims to protect? 7. Universities as the system's heartbeat. Lig Sheehy of Universities Australia made it clear. Universities are not just beneficiaries of international students. They're the lifeblood of the entire ecosystem. Their global research and domestic subsidy roles make them irreplaceable. But this raises a question. Can Australia's higher education model survive without international students, or is it already too dependent on them? The answer may determine the sector's long-term viability. 8. States on the front line of the student experience. While federal policy sets the rules, state governments are responsible for the day-to-day realities of student life. Queensland's Simone Fuller emphasized that a quality education must be paired with safe communities and affordable housing. This is where reputation is made or broken. But how can states balance their responsibilities with limited resources? The pressure is on to deliver a seamless experience. But the solutions may require unprecedented collaboration between levels of government. 9. Australia's struggles are global, not unique. Amy Baker of The Pie rightly placed Australia's challenges in a global context. Every major study destination, Canada, the UK, the US, is grappling with immigration, housing, and public trust. The key difference? Australia's ability to provide clarity and stability in an era of uncertainty. Can it lead by example, or will it fall into the same traps as its peers? The world is watching. 10. Education as a workforce solution. The final takeaway is perhaps the most forward-looking. International education will become a formal driver of Australia's skills agenda. Courses will be designed not just for academic excellence, but for national employment needs. This shift from passive alignment to active strategy is a game changer. But will it alienate students seeking personal growth, or will it create a new generation of globally competitive graduates? The answer may redefine the purpose of education itself. What do you think? Is Australia's policy update a step in the right direction, or is it missing the bigger picture? Share your thoughts in the comments below. After all, the future of this sector depends not just on ministers and ministers, but on the voices of everyone it touches.